Good morning, everybody. So the fire alarm test signals that it's 10 o'clock and it's time for the start of our first meeting of the Homes and Housing Delivery Committee. So welcome, everybody. My name's Barry Parsons. I'm a councillor and I'm a member of this committee, and I'm going to first of all welcome everybody to the meeting today. Thank you all so much for coming. It's a new chapter, and I'm excited to see what we're able to achieve. I'm going to start by welcoming members of the committee and asking you to introduce themselves. So let's start with Richard.
I'm Cllr Peat. I'm Vice Chairman of the Committee, Councillor for Bishops.
Councillor Sibusiso Shabalala for Central Ward.
I'm Ellie Freeman. I'm Bedminster, subbing for Lisa today.
Councillor Jerome Thomas from Clifton.
I'm Nicholas Higgins, Westbury and Henleys. I'm not a member of this committee, but I'm here for Just Luck.
Councillor Baikawal McGraby from Froome Vale.
Councillor Goggin, Harcliffe and Winwood.
Councillor Zoe Peat for Avonmouth and Lawrence Weston.
Thank you very much. And next I'm going to ask the officers sitting here on the top table next to me to introduce themselves. So.
Thank you. It would help if I could turn it on. So, hi everyone, I'm Fiona Lester, Interim Director of Homes and Landlord Services.
And I'm Ian Evans, Policy Committee.
Thank you very much. I'll ask officers on my right to introduce themselves as we get to the relevant items. Now, some housekeeping to start off with. So you've just heard the fire alarm. That was a test, so that's why we're still sitting here and not dashing for the exits. But if the fire alarm does sound again, then it will be an emergency. So the emergency evacuation procedure is that in the event of the alarm sounding, please leave the room calmly by the lobby area and the main front door of City Hall, then turn to your right, walk down the ramp towards the cathedral, and the assembly point is in front of the cathedral. Thanks very much. So we're on to agenda item 2 now, which is apologies for absence and substitutions. We've received apologies from Councillors Joss Clark and Lisa Stone, and they will be substituted by Councillor Nicholas Coombs and Councillor Ellie Freeman, respectively. Can I ask if there's any other apologies? Doesn't look like it. Got a full house, thank you. So moving on then, agenda item 3 is declarations of interest. So this is where I ask committee members, do you have any interest to declare in relation to any of the items of business on our agenda today? No? Okay, thank you very much. Agenda item 4 then, it's Chair's announcements. So, this is, as I said, the first meeting of the Homes and Housing Delivery Committee under our new committee system of governance. And I'm pleased to see so many members of the public and the press and the gallery. Thank you very much for coming. It's great to see engagement from people in our city with our decision making. This is really important stuff, and it's great to see you here. Thank you for taking part. I was pleased to see a number of questions received from the public as well. Looking forward to members of the public continuing to engage actively with the work of this committee through the public forum today and at future meetings. I'd like to remind everyone that we expect high standards of conduct at these meetings, respect each other please, and for members, if you have your questions on any of the items or anything you'd like to say, please go through the chair, and if you follow up questions or anything like that, please again continue to indicate to the chair when you'd like to speak. So we've got a packed agenda today. I don't want to keep us, but in light of the recent publication of the judgment by the government's regulator of social housing, I just wanted to highlight the report in agenda item 10, which is the Housing and Consumer Standards Programme and Compliance Update. That item details what's happened with regard to the government's judgment on our social housing and what we're doing in response to that judgment. So, thank you very much. Moving on, we are on agenda item number 5, which is public forum. 10 public questions have been received, and the questions and the replies have been circulated and published on the Council's website, along with the agenda papers. We have up to 30 minutes available for public forum, and I'm looking to see if there's anyone in the gallery who has submitted a question today. Could you show of hands? Thank you very much. So I'm not seeing Simon Hoback, I don't believe. So Dan Ackroyd, then you're up next. And so Simon Hoback had questions number 1 and 2. So Dan, your question number 3 is our first public question that we can discuss here today. What I would propose, if it's all right by you, Dan, is that since your initial questions and the responses have already been published, if you have any follow-up questions on any of these 3, then please ask them now, and you have up to 2 follow-up questions.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you to the committee for the answers. Regarding question 4, I don't understand the answer or how it answers the question. The question was, how did the breakdown in process happen that led to Bristol City Council just not changing their processes or becoming compliant with law, with either the fire safety or housing management laws? Where was the breakdown in process? I don't understand the answer. Please, could you either explain it to me or ask the officers to give a clearer answer, please?
Thanks very much, Dan. I think one thing I would say is that we're right now in the process of trying to respond to the regulator's judgment, and I think there will be a time later on for us to kind of look back and try and understand more about what went wrong. Initially, though, I think we are very much focused on what we're doing now. But maybe I could ask Richard James if you've got any comment on that question.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Richard James, so I'm the Housing and Consumer Standards lead. So I oversaw the external review, and now I'm leading on the delivery of the improvement programme. I suppose just a little bit of background, because there has been lots of change in the sector, which has affected a lot of all organisations. I think it's not just that the council has suddenly not met new requirements. I think that there has been a lot of change in the sector, but the consumer standards, which are under the Social Housing Act, they've been in place for some time. They have changed, and the new consumer standards and the new regulatory regime came out in April, and we have responded to that. But that doesn't mean the compliance regime for meeting a lot of the statutory obligations are brand new. What became evident as we were doing our preparations, so we started the external review in November 2023, and it became evident that there were some gaps, and that was bringing to light things that we needed to do to meet current legislation, but also to respond to new requirements that were coming in April 2024. But I suppose I'd like to say that what we have done is we have tried to be really robust with the reviews that have been undertaken, and really robust in our response through the Housing Consumer Standards Programme to make sure we've identified all issues and taken a really thorough way to respond to them. There are established mechanisms in the council to pick up new legislation, and that did happen. So there are teams which I've mentioned in the response there that are established now and are in place. So I wouldn't say that the council didn't know and didn't understand the new requirements. I think what we weren't aware of fully until the external reviews is our position against those requirements.
And Dan, you have one further follow-up question.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank the officer and thank the question. Regarding question 5, I really do think it would help us committee help understand what's going on if the charts or reports included historic data. Sorry, that's more a statement of the question, but I do hope the committee looks at changing the format of the reports to see how mitigating actions change from one meeting to the next. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, and I think as noted in the officer response that risk reporting is a matter for the Strategy and Resources Committee, but what we can do here is we can take away an action to recommend to that committee that they look at the format of the reporting. Thank you. Okay. So we have further questions from Joanna Booth and Suzanne Audrey, but I'm not seeing either of them here. So I think that concludes our public forum for today. And thank you everybody who submitted questions, and look forward to receiving more of those in the future. Thank you. We're moving on now to agenda item number 6. And that's the Homes and Housing Delivery Policy Committee Annual Business Report. I'd like to advise the committee that this is our committee's annual business report. It's been published. There are no decisions to be taken on this report, which is for information. So now I'm going to ask Ian Hurd, who's our Policy Committee Coordinator, to briefly outline the report for everyone.
Thank you, Chair. As you say, the report is purely for information. It's the annual business report for the committee. The report sets out the membership of the committee. It asks you to note the appointment of yourself as the chair of the committee, as appointed by full council in May, along with Councillor Richard Eddy as vice chair. The terms of reference of the committee are also set out and the meeting dates for the year ahead, but the report is essentially for information.
Thank you very much, Ian. There's an opportunity now for members of the committee to ask any questions that you may have, or make any comments. If you'd like to, please just show your hand. No? Thank you very much. Okay, so for the Clarity Committee and for benefit of the members of the public, I'm going to now read out the recommendations of the report. These are to note the membership of the Homes and Housing Delivery Policy Committee for 2024 to 25, to note the appointment of myself, Councillor Barry Parsons, as the Chair of the Homes and Housing Delivery Policy Committee for 2024-25, to note the appointment of Councillor Richard Eddy as the Vice Chair of the Homes and Housing Delivery Policy Committee for 2024-25, to note the terms of reference for the Homes and Housing Delivery Policy Committee, and to note the Homes and Housing Delivery Policy Committee's meeting dates for 2024-25. Do I have a... so as already mentioned, this is an information report. There's no decision to be taken, and there's no vote to be taken. So all that remains for me to do then is to ask the committee if you're happy to note the report recommendations as set out in the report. Thank you. So that concludes agenda item number 6. Agenda item number 7 is the Quarter 1 2024-25 Corporate Risk Report. This report provides an update on current significant strategic risks to achieving the Council's objectives. within the Homes and Housing Delivery Committee's remit, as set out in the Corporate Strategy 2022-27, and it summarises progress in managing the risks and actions being taken as at Q1 2024-25. There are no decisions to be taken on this report, which is for information. So now I'm going to invite Fiona Lester, Director of Housing and Landlord Services, to introduce and outline this report.
Thank you. So just to outline the report, there are 4 key risks within the report. We've got one critical, which is Cllr 60, and that's around the failure for the HOA stock to meet statutory obligations in decent homes. Rather than go into the mitigations that sit with that, much of the issues that are highlighted as risks will be covered today by officers in the areas that they will discuss in more detail. But just to say, a response to the mitigation for our Cllr 60 is around the work that we're doing for the Consumer Standards Programme. The second risk I need to highlight with you is a high risk. It's Cllr 48, and this relates to the possibility of not being able to meet the affordable housing needs project for Project 1000 and its delivery. Again, I've got a colleague with me today who will speak more around the mitigations that we have in place and the work that we're doing around that. We also have Cllr 37, which relates to our homelessness and the cost of homelessness and the impact of such. The resulting mitigation that we have in place is the Tackling Homeless programme. Again, I have a colleague here today to talk to us about homelessness and some of the actions taking place there. And the fourth risk that's highlighted as high is Cllr 52, and this relates to our failure to manage and evidence compliance with the Building Safety Act 2022. Again, this work fits in 2 spaces within the Consumer Standard Programme that we have ongoing at the moment, but also the work that's been done prior to that, setting up a building safety team that are very specifically look at this area. I'd like to invite officers, if I can, just to comment on some of the risk mitigations, because I think that would be helpful. So can we start with Cllr 48, which is around housing delivery? Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. So my name is Louise Davis and I'm Head of Housing Delivery here at Bristol. So the Cllr 48 sits at high because officers and politicians, leaders have always felt that this is important, it's high. The impact of not meeting the city's affordable housing need is deemed critical in terms of the community and social impact for the city, and it's also considered likely in that we are not and probably won't be able to meet the housing needs of the city. I mean, the housing needs of the city are absolutely huge. What we are doing to address this is clearly through the Project 1000 housing delivery plan that we adopted a few years ago and are reviewing this year. And that identifies three key routes to housing delivery: our own direct delivery programme with the council housing programme, the work with our registered provider partners and other third-party providers, and obviously our work with Cllr Homes, the council's housing company, who's building 50% of their delivery programme for affordable housing. And we know that housing delivery in the city is complex. There aren't easy sites in Bristol. We are still faced with the impact, dare I say it, of the pandemic and Brexit and challenges in the development market and the construction sector. We have seen and continue to see developer and contractor insolvency across the city, which has a major impact on the speed of delivery. But what we are doing very, very strongly is focusing on building homes where we can make them viable, looking at sites that aren't normally coming forward, focusing on supported housing delivery. So a lot of the work of the delivery team is around addressing our corporate priorities and our transformation work streams, so bringing on homes forward that we might not normally have focused on. We do have over 1,700 affordable homes in active delivery in the city at the moment. So fantastic news. Those homes will start completing this year, they will carry on for years to come. And we have a fairly secure pipeline of affordable housing delivery with 750 homes over 20 sites that will start on site this year or early next. And beyond that, a further healthy delivery programme from all of our partners, including the council and Cllr, coming up through into planning and into sort of being much more secure. We're working with a huge range of provider partners. We have significant national RP providers working in the city, so the likes of F&G, who would have probably known as Sovereign, Abri, Asta, Curo, organisations that have got long-term visions for building in the city. And we're also encouraging smaller and more local organisations to work with us. So those that haven't got development at scale but are really crucial to work with us, and particularly around supported housing. The likes of Elim, refugee specialist organisation who are also working around homelessness called ACH, it's Ashley Community Housing. Brighton Places were a very valuable local Bristol-based small RP. So we're working with a lot of providers to help address that delivery.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. I'd also like to just quickly mention Cllr 37 around homelessness and invite an officer to speak.
Thank you. Morning, my name is Paul Sylvester. I'm the Head of Housing Options, so I lead the Council's homelessness services. This particular risk has been static at 20 for some time, and it reflects the significant challenges that the Council and the City have around homelessness, not just the financial pressure of temporary accommodation, but the impact on the people who are homeless and on our communities. So the risk itself is being reviewed to incorporate the activities of our Tackling Homelessness programme. It's something that Fiona mentioned just now. So this is a corporate-wide programme, transformation programme, with the aim of increasing our success in preventing homelessness and changing our temporary accommodation portfolio to reduce spend and better meet need. I believe that there's an update on the Tackling Homelessness programme coming to this committee in September, Chair, so there'll be more information on that then. In terms of how we manage and monitor our success, we have for corporate KPIs in the annual business plan, looking at rough sleeping, homelessness prevention, temporary accommodation, and move on into settled accommodation. Thank you.
Thank you. And then just for public's awareness, Cllr 60, the critical risk, and Cllr 52 will be covered by the officer when they do the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. So one of the reasons why we wanted to take this report early on in today's meeting is because in a way it sort of sets the scene for the critical challenges that we're facing in our housing service, and particularly, as we've heard, those challenges and risks around homelessness and the impact of that on the delivery of affordable housing, and particularly a focus today is going to be around consumer standards in the homes that we provide for people, around things like building safety and decent homes. So I'd like to allow an opportunity now for comments or questions from members. So if you'd like to speak, then please just raise your hand. And I'm going to go to Councillor Eddy first.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I'm sure I can speak for Councillor Parsons and myself. We've been really impressed by the quality of the homelessness prevention work your service is doing. And that certainly, since our appointment in May, that's been manifest. I appreciate you've done a significant amount of the work you need to do to mitigate it. My concern, and I'm not seeking to trivialise in any way the huge value of the work which has been done, but since there's been an almost insatiable increase in demand for accommodation since COVID at least, how confident can we be that it's taking off all the mitigation measures we have in place are likely to succeed?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Eddy. So we're at the beginning, very much at the beginning of our Tackling Homelessness programme. We've brought in the things that we can do quickly, but many of the changes that we're bringing in, particularly the redesign of my service, which is focused on homelessness prevention, will be coming in the coming months. I'm pleased to report that our temporary accommodation numbers have been relatively static since April, which is the first time for many months that has happened. There are significant challenges, but we are very confident that this package of work that we're going to bring in will deliver the changes that we need. We do believe that with the issues around affordability in the city and supply of affordable housing, that homelessness will be with us for some time. But we are confident that we can get on top of the financial challenges that the council have got, particularly around temporary accommodation, through the various different work streams that are looking at bringing online more cost-effective temporary accommodation, particularly support housing that my colleague Louise Davison mentioned earlier, delivered by registered providers.
Thank you.
Councillor Eddie.
My second question, I don't know whether Fiona or Richard wants to respond. It's about the consumer standards impact on the housing stock. And I'm conscious, as you said, that I should only ask the question, not preempt the debate we're having later, of course. Obviously, it's at quite an early stage of response, although I've been impressed by the seriousness officers have already taken, setting commissioning the Savills inquiry, setting up a project board, of course, to move this forward. And clearly the way the administration sought to be transparent and more tenants sort of likely. I'm conscious, obviously, well, first, a lot depends on us marshalling the resources, the finances, and investing that over the next few years, but equally so to succeed. And your mitigation measures seem to indicate this. We're going to need to recruit or commission a huge amount of detailed expertise and skills. I'm wondering how successful that's likely to be and whether we're able to step outside, for example, the local government strictures on salary levels.
I'll take that one. Thank you, Councillor Eddy, for that question. So, as you pointed out, we face a considerable challenge in terms of resource to support us in this activity. And that challenge is made even greater because the challenge that we face in response to the regulatory judgment and our requirement for our units is the same challenge that many landlords across the UK face. So what we have is that issue of supply and demand, and everyone fighting for the same types of skilled individuals at the same time. What I can confirm is that as part of that project plan, part of that work, we set aside budget and made a commitment around resource. A resource plan has already been developed, and we've also set aside a separate team supporting, working from HR. The HR team have got people at the bed now within our service, working with officers to set up, recruitment plans to recruit the individuals that we need. The way that we're doing this is we recognise to be competitive, we may need to require temps rather than full-time individuals into our employ. But that is underway and is a challenge, but it was something that we recognised quite early on, so that plan's in place. And what I can confirm is that a number of key roles have already been recruited into that.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you. We had a question from Cllr Peat.
Hi there, I have 3 different questions. So first off, we know that 2 million was secured for the stock surveys, and this was signed off in June 2023. I was wondering, why is it that these stock surveys have only recently began?
Yeah, so since the budget was signed off, there has been a competitive tender exercise undertaken, which accounts for some of that, not all of it. There has also been changes within key personnel within the council over the last year, which has also unfortunately delayed that process. But I think what I would like to say is that we understood the challenges, and we understand that sometimes we haven't been able to progress things as quickly as possible, and that's why we are taking the programme approach to the consumer standards programme, which has brought in a lot more dedicated resource and much more enhanced oversight from senior leaders across the council, and there's a programme board that is chaired by the Executive Director of Growth and Regeneration, John Smith. So we are wrapping around a lot more robust processes to ensure that we do deliver the very challenging improvement programme that we've got in place going forward.
Thank you.
And Councillor Peat, we'll take a second question and then we'll go on to Councillor Thomas and come back to you.
No worries. So the budget for electrical safety and testing was secured in the February and March of 2022, and again put in place in March 2023. It was then quadrupled from 70 to 100 safety testings to then 400, and yet we're still currently not providing 400 EPC testings a month, as far as I can understand. Can you provide some information on why there is this backlog?
Yes, I can. So, yes, the budget has been increased. We have a number of contractors which are working on that programme to deliver those numbers. There have been challenges in the mobilisation and getting contractors to get up to those numbers, although they are increasing. I haven't got the numbers for recent months to hand, but I can provide that outside of this meeting. But they are certainly increasing, and progress is being made, and we are accelerating the delivery. We are also actively progressing additional contracts on top of those already in place to increase the pace further.
Hello.
I think we might have to pause a while until our microphones are working again. Everything's off, isn't it? That's fine.
Five-minute break.
Yes. Let's take a brief pause until we can work out what's going on.
Hey.
Yeah.
Microphone's not coming back on, no? Oh, there we go. How's that? Can you hear me? No. I think it's just we will wait until the system's rebooted, because I think for accessibility's sake it's important that we can all hear each other.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Because some of these are from samples, I was asking questions. What about electrical testing? That will then take it as that's the biggest thing. What's happened to the wind? Well, no, that's it depends on how it progresses with the planning. It's on the blocks. where the inflammable code is still on. Well, we don't have them anymore. Yeah, but how's your planning been taken? Have you put a new alarm system in?
That's working now, isn't it? Okay.
Half a sprinkler system.
Thanks back on. Hopefully we'll get our
Well, the
again soon. Crack on now.
The mic's on, but the output's not on. The output's not on.
Is it not?
Just give it a tap.
Well, you're costing a fortune, but I mean, the thing there is, where are you? Because they're out of your
projecting.
solve the problem. The biggest problem we've got with lots is evacuation. How are they going to evacuate? I remember in the block it said that they've changed it now to actual proper fire safety stickers, but before it said there's a fire, don't leave your house, stay in your block. Yeah, but you see the evacuation thing keeps changing. Sorry, are we interrupting the meeting?
Is that better?
No. But the evacuation policy keeps
Well,
changing.
while we're waiting, we can discuss Barton House.
Barton House is not on the agenda at the moment, unfortunately, but I'm very happy to talk afterwards.
This is corporate.
Sorry? Yeah.
Nobody knows whether you stand.
Okay, well, as long as you remember that Barton House residents are still here fighting for justice, really.
Absolutely, yes, very happy to talk afterwards as well. Thank you, everyone. So, are we still without speakers? I can't tell from here.
If you tap it, you'll be able to hear.
Or not on.
Right.
I can just hear your voice.
At the moment, I was standing for very long.
Is that any better?
No, there's no microphone.
I think we just need to turn it on here, Barry. It's just slowing down.
Hey.
Hello.
It's fine. We were at the time.
So the state corporate is actually dangerous. But the total evacuation
shall we use the hand on now? Shall the...
Yeah, and after what makes it come up. I don't know why it's not
Okay. We can have a roving mic for members.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's continue then, shall we? So, we were still on agenda item 7, and we're going to go to Councillor Thomas for his next question.
Small number of questions. So the first one is around homelessness and whether Paul, you mentioned there's an improvement, but I assume that some of that is just seasonal improvement during the summer rather than necessarily an underlying trend improvement in temporary accommodation.
We get someone to run the mic.
I just went for, yeah, working support them, but that's it.
Is it being recorded? If it's not being recorded, then people just speak up.
It's not being recorded.
No, okay.
Yeah.
Is that microphone working?
That's the only way to microphone.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, yeah, thanks for the questions around whether the recent plateauing in temporary accommodation placements is seasonal or not. So we have compared it to previous years, and in the previous couple of years we did see an increase, particularly in June and July. So it is different to last year. And quite often we do see an increase in the summer months for various different reasons, but we have looked at seeing if it is seasonal. If it isn't, I think every month that goes by, we're just increasing our gaining confidence that what we're doing is working.
Okay, thank you. At the moment, we've got separate risks for compliance with the Building Safety Act and compliance with landlord statutory obligations. I would have thought, given that the actual risk is, death or injury, most significantly, I would have thought compliance was probably the same risk, and it might be easy to manage if it was being looked at as a single risk. And following on, I know quite a lot of comments around fire risk and electrical issues, but I'm curious to know what the state of play is with structural surveys, because it's falling off buildings that might well be most likely to cause death or injury. So I'm really keen to know how we're approaching the compliance piece in a kind of risk-assessed way and risk-prioritised way.
Yeah. So on the first point about there being two risks, I think we certainly take that way and have a look at it. There are slight differences between those, but I get your point about the outcome is the same. So we're doing a number of things. So we, as mentioned earlier, we're rolling out the stock condition survey program. They are not detailed structural surveys. Alongside that, we are focusing on more detailed, in-depth surveys focused on our high-rise properties, and that's linked to the building safety cases which we need to develop, which are really detailed analysis of each of our high-rise blocks to understand the risks posed by those properties and any mitigations that we need to put in place. So there is a plan to focus on those high-rise, and we have prioritised the high-rise within that to focus on the blocks that we believe are the highest risk within there, generally around scale and number of occupants, but also around construction type.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Apologies, Jerome. I'm told that the table mics are working again. Can you hear me now? Yeah. Fantastic. Okay, we have lost a bit of time because of that interruption, I'm afraid. So we will have more opportunities to ask about all of these items as we go along through the agenda. So I'm going to propose that we move on now.
Can I just quickly ask a question about systems? Because I've seen a lot of detail in the reports around getting particular programs completed, but there's really no sense whether the kind of databases that we've got and the kind of ticketing items for improvements are fit for purpose.
Can we have a brief answer to that question then? As I say, there will be opportunities on all of these points in future agenda items.
Systems and data are key challenges for us. I'm going to be clear. So within the programme, we have specific work streams which are focused on those. You do have a point that that we need to make sure we have really clear data and really effective systems to be able to deliver robust programs and to understand our position. So within the regulated judgment, they were clear as well that our data and systems need more work, but that has been captured and that's an intrinsic part of the programme.
Thank you. Okay, thanks very much, everybody. The officer recommendation in this report is that the Homes and Housing Delivery Committee note the report. So, as already mentioned, this is an information report. There's no decision to be taken, there's no vote to be taken, but can I ask the committee, are you happy to note the report? Thank you. Moving on, agenda item 8 is the framework contract for temporary accommodation. This report asks members to note the urgent key decision that was taken on the 14th of June 2024 to enter into a 2-year contract with Cllr Peat until March 2026 with a contract value of £2.1 million. There are no decisions to be taken on this report, which is for information. I should say that this is a class of decision that would otherwise have come to this committee because it's a key decision. So it's a decision that involves more than one ward or a spend of over £500,000. but it was taken by officers as an urgent decision for reasons that will be made clear in a minute. I'm going to invite Paul Sylvester, who's Head of Housing Options, to introduce and outline the report.
Thank you, Chair. So, as you summarised, this report sets out the reasons why an urgent key decision was taken to enter into another contract with Cllr Travel, the organisation that we use to source hotel accommodation for clients. And the report also sets out our ambitions for reducing our reliance on hotels as emergency accommodation. So Bristol has experienced rising rates of homelessness, and since the pandemic we've seen an 18% increase in households approaching the council because of homelessness-related issues. Over the same period, the number of households in temporary accommodation has more than doubled. So our temporary accommodation supply has not kept pace with demand. Bristol City Council, like many other local authorities, have needed to secure hotel accommodation for clients who are homeless where there is no other suitable alternative. So what are we doing about it? I think this is the third time that I'm mentioning it, and I'm going to mention it again in a later report. So through the Council's Tackling Homelessness programme, which again is coming to committee in September, we are focused on transferring all aspects of our temporary accommodation provision and increasing our success in preventing homelessness. It will, however, take time to change our portfolio of temporary accommodation. So whilst we are in this period of transition, we needed to enter into a new agreement with Cllr Travel to continue to use hotel accommodation for clients who are homeless. Our aim is to end our use of hotel accommodation by March 2026. So who are Cllr Travel? So as mentioned, Cllr Travel is an online portal which Bristol City Council uses to make hotel placements. This service is used across the council, but we use it the most in Housing Options. The online portal is free to use, and we get a 5% discount on hotel prices. Cllr Travel are on a NEPO 507 framework contract for the provision of travel management services. This framework is a trusted external framework used widely by other local authorities, and the framework meets public sector procurement regulations. The proposed contract is for 2 years, started in June 2024, the contract value of 2.1 million. So why was an urgent key decision made? So we already had a contract with Cllr Travel, and for a number of reasons we saw a high number of households needing hotel accommodation above what we were forecasting, which meant that the contract value was due to run out before the first committee meeting with this new administration. So we couldn't allow that to happen, which is why we made an urgent key decision. The report shows the recent expenditure on hotels, as well as the number of households in hotels at the end of each month. The number of hotels placements peaked in April, and has reduced since then as one of our emergency accommodation providers joined our new framework and moved households out of hotels into their accommodation. So that's a brief overview of the report, Chair.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to move to questions from the committee, and I'm going to start with Councillor Peat.
I understand that the contract was extended for procurement reasons because it's rather to do to go through a regulated system rather than buy one-off. But I wonder, was there a competitive tender or any idea about that? I remember when I was working in the civil service, we were always very frustrated that we seemed to be paying over the odds by using our booking system rather than just going out on the open market. I just had a look at the numbers here. It seems we're paying £150 a night for hotel rooms through this system, whereas you can get a Premier Inn in this city tonight for 120. So that 25% extra, even with a 5% discount, could save us £400,000 over the course of the next 2 years.
So I'll take each of those points in turn. So the NEPO framework, the tendering, the competitive tendering happens for somebody to go onto that framework, so that's happened already, which is a great way of local authorities speeding up procurement exercises. So like I said, it is free, and we get a 5% reduction. Every single hotel in Bristol is available through the Cllr Travel portal. There are, however, some hotels who won't accept our bookings, so we're limited the number of hotels that we can use. We have done our own independent verification that the prices through the portal are the same as what we would get or lower if we went and just booked on the hotel's websites, and we found that to be true in all cases.
Councillor Reddy.
To be honest, Paul, this isn't a question but a comment. Obviously, Councillor Parsons and I have already seen this report, and to me it seems a no-brainer. Well, we're not being asked for a decision that's been taken, but it is a sign of this authority's commitment to tackling homelessness, so I welcome that. But I'm also quite proud it's came to this, the first Homes and Housing Delivery Committee. When we moved from the mayoral system to the committee, one of the arguments, in my view, one of the key arguments was transparency. And obviously, a decision needed to be made before today. Understandable. You consulted with the chairman and myself. Though that debate was actually emailed to all committee members, subsequently it was delegated to the exec director to approve. So that to me is a sign of actually transparency, so I welcome that very much.
Thank you, Richard. Councillor Freeman.
Just a quick question, hopefully. Just looking at the figures, and you said in your summary that obviously there was quite a sharp increase in placements needed. Do we know why that is? And is there any, I mean obviously you can't guarantee anything, but are we confident that we're not going to see those kind of, gone from 27 to 142, we're not going to see that kind of increase in the future?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So we were seeing a slight increase in hotel use as an underlying trend. The key issue here, why it peaked up to 140 households in hotels, that it timed with our recommissioning of our emergency accommodation framework. So our emergency accommodation framework is the way that we procure services for homeless households. It's available on the day. It's mostly delivered by private organisations, and the reason why we were recommissioning it was to constrain the cost that we were paying on emergency accommodation, and frankly some of our existing providers didn't like it, so they refused to go onto the new framework. We had a very clear steer that what we were doing from CLBs, what we were doing was intervening in the market, and we were to hold our nerve and not use these providers. So it did peak at 140, but then one of the providers was refusing to move on the new framework, has since done so, to save the council a significant amount of money.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sullivan.
Yes, hi. Paul, one of the risks in terms of the ways to mitigate risk was recommissioning, so effective commissioning. In the current commissioning process, how is this control of mitigating risk in temporary accommodation through the procurement being exercised?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So this comes back to the work that we're doing under the Tackling Homelessness programme, the different types of temporary accommodation that we are looking to commission from our trusted partners as an alternative to hotels and as an alternative to the privately managed temporary accommodation that I just mentioned that comes through the framework. So what we're aiming to do is to change our portfolio of temporary accommodation, get rid of hotels and reduce our reliance on private organisations, whilst increasing accommodation provided by registered providers, trusted local charities and indeed city councils. There are a number of frameworks that are live at the moment where we're looking to source accommodation and increase that better type of TA for clients.
I'll follow that on. Part of the report mentions the significant inefficiency of data that some data is captured and quite a lot is not. So though you've got some insight when you try and analyze it, it could be googly-goo, right? So how do we make sure that we've got effective data? Because that data will then impact on the demographic spread, 91 different languages. We need to make sure that in terms of schooling has got sufficient places and an awareness of the importance of second language support. So there's other impacts of the temporary housing data not being clear has an impact on aligning the support services that they may need. How can we better make the data capturing a priority that is not voluntary because of the impact it would have if it continues to be voluntary?
So good questions. There's quite a lot in there, and I think I'll answer some of it, but I welcome the follow-up discussion outside of this committee. So we do have a lot of data. There are gaps, though, particularly in some of the data where clients are expected to self-report. We are looking to improve that. We've got pretty good data on communication preferences, but I think one of the key challenges is who and how we share data with other parts of the council that need to know about it, particularly community development and other parts of the council.
Thank you very much, everyone. We can move on now. The officer recommendation in this report is that the Homes and Housing Delivery Committee notes the urgent key decision taken on the 14th of June 2024 to enter a 2-year contract with Cllr Travel until March 2026 to secure hotel accommodation for clients who are homeless, as set out in the officer decision notice, Appendix A. This is an information report. There's no decision to be taken, no vote. Can I ask the committee, are you happy to note the report? Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's move on then to agenda item 9, which is the 5-month extension of homelessness supported pathway contracts. So this is an opportunity to get a bit more about the commissioning questions that we were just discussing on the previous report. And this also forms part of the Council's response to the challenges of homelessness in our city. So the report asks members to note the decision taken to extend homelessness supported pathway contracts by just over 5 months from the 27th of October 2024 to the 31st of March 2025, and to approve an additional 5 months of funding for pathway services in 2029-2030, so that full 5-year contracts can be offered. Now, this is a key decision as it involves spend of more than £500,000. I'd like to invite Paul Sylvester to introduce and outline the report.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm going to start off with some background information on supported accommodation and move on to the contract decisions. So supported accommodation plays a vital role in the Council's strategy to address homelessness and rough sleeping and will be needed for many years to come. So this report is regarding supported housing for single people without children, but just for context, we also provide supported accommodation for families and for young people. So Bristol City Council commissions around 850 units of supported accommodation for single homeless adults who may struggle to live independently as a result of challenges including mental ill health, substance and alcohol misuse, and involvement in the criminal justice system. Sat behind me is my colleague Andrew Linton. Andrew is the commissioning manager for this Pathways accommodation and will be available to help me answer any questions later. So our supported accommodation is organised into 4 pathways. We have pathway for men, women, mixed gender and a specialist substance use pathway that's commissioned by Public Health. Each pathway contains a range of supported accommodation from high support with 24/7 on-site staffing and low support accommodation for visiting staff who are supporting clients. The idea is that the service user enters the pathway at the support level they need, and they move through and out of the pathway and into the independent accommodation. So pathway accommodation is provided by trusted non-profit providers with contracts seeking best value for the council whilst meeting legitimate provider costs. The majority of the contract costs go towards paying the salaries and support staff who work directly with Pathways residents, our clients, to address the root causes of homelessness and develop their skills and resources to live independently. This is a cost-effective model for the council when compared to privately managed unsupported temporary accommodation, and as such we are looking to develop more of this type of accommodation for both single people and families through the Tackling Homelessness programme. It costs the council less and provides the support that people need. So just moving on to the contracts. So yes, approval was given by Cabinet on the 24th February 2024 to recommission services with new contracts operating for a maximum of 5 years from the 28th of October 2024 to the 27th of October 2029. Recently, the Executive Director of Growth and Regeneration in consultation with the Chair of the Homes and Housing Delivery Committee authorised the extension of our current Pathway contracts until the 31st of March next year. The compelling reasons for doing this were to allow greater time to implement improvements to the way contracts are monitored to ensure we get the best out of the contracts, to allow time to resolve conversations with 2 accommodation providers who have recently raised the possibility of remodelling some of their provision, and also to align contract start dates of new substance use treatment services which start on the 1st of April to allow for greater alignment of homelessness and substance use services. So, on to the decision part of the report. As the 2024-25 extension will use up just over 5 months of the maximum 5 years funding agreed by Cabinet in February. New contracts on the 1st of April will currently only be awarded for under 4 years and 7 months, so from the 1st of April 25 to the 27th of April 29. We are therefore requesting approval for additional funding for the new contracts, so the contracts can be offered for a maximum of 5 years, from next April to the 31st of March 2030, aligning with the end of the financial year. Contracts would initially be for 3 years with the option to extend for a further 2. The report sets out the finances for these decisions and the additional funding required for the extension. So that's my overview of the report.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to invite the committee to ask any questions that you may have. I'm not seeing any hands so far.
Yeah, sure, thanks. Quite a number here. The impact in the city centre is quite severe. So you mentioned things around the pathways and readjusting the market for better positioning. I'd like to just find out a bit more about what's the current position in terms of supply and demand. Yes, there is more of a leniency towards non-for-profit. As mentioned on the report, there's a lack of options.
Thank you for your question. I think we would like to bring on more of this type of accommodation. I think it works really well for the majority of clients who go through it. At the same time, we know that the housing market in Bristol is very challenging to bring on new properties. It's something that we have explored and will continue to explore. But for the meantime, I guess we are also really thinking about how we make the most of what we've got. And part of this recommissioning exercise is, ensuring that the properties we have, we're using, to meet the needs of people who are homeless in Bristol to the best of our abilities.
Thank you. There's an element where you mentioned reducing subsidy loss through non-registered providers. What is the current impact of that, and what's been done so far to mitigate that?
Okay. If you wouldn't mind, did you mention subsidy loss through registered?
Yeah, reducing subsidy loss, I think it's 0.8. And I think it's something that you wanted to do around non-regulated providers. maybe some of them weren't meeting your contract requirements or maybe support around that?
Cool, yeah, I'll take that question. So the good news is that the majority of our supported pathways, there's no subsidy loss at all. The vast majority of provision is owned by registered providers, so we don't incur any subsidy loss. There is a small amount that isn't owned by registered providers, and as part of the recommissioning process, we're exploring whether there are any options for reducing the subsidy loss there, again, to make sure that these contracts offer the best value for money for the council.
Now, this seems to lead quite clearly towards the corporate strategy. And if, when you're looking at Project 100, for example, there's quite a number of issues around capacity and the capacity of, developing more homes versus, supporting the current stock, and then that impact on staff and the impact of getting new staff, on temporary staffing as opposed to permanent staffing, and the budget issues that we're currently facing. So I think I'm just getting more and more concerned, or is it an opportunity to maybe to review the strategy and reduce some of those targets so that we're not chasing targets but projects are not delivered in the time that they should be delivered. The cost implication of that seems to lie around where the targets themselves are set, and maybe they just set too far. The strategy and resource group, in their last meeting, mentioned that this is one of the core impacts of the financial impacts, that pushing projects and targets that aren't being met is actually quite a huge impact. How are we making sure that when it comes to the homelessness contractual duty, we're not necessarily stretching providers, because it is creating a new demand. We have more people coming to Bristol because of the reputation that it's able to support the demand. So by supporting the demand, we're increasing the demand. And by increasing the demand, we are creating more situations of financial restraint for ourselves. Currently, a lot of the providers seem to be around city centre, as mentioned on the report, and in the use of hotels and shared accommodations, mainly in the city centre, you find in the city centre nearly becoming unrecognisable. So, I'd like to just challenge a bit more to see what are those providers doing in terms of supporting the immediate areas where they are situated, and if there is actually any regulation or guidance that they are provided with how they can manage or mitigate some of those issues. Not only is it the city centre, but it is also within highly deprived neighbourhoods that some of the inner cities starting to be hugely impacted. How can you change that within your commissioning processes?
Thanks, Liz. I'm going to ask Fiona Lester to answer that question. Just a reminder to members as well, please, if you have second or subsequent questions, please indicate to the chair, and try and keep questions concise so that officers can answer them concisely. Thank you.
So, thank you, Councillor. I think it's clear from the question and the length of the question that it's a complex matter. So it's complex because, as you were quite clearly describing, really, we've got a finite resource, and there are a number of calls on that finite resource for us as a city and as a landlord around the call and the provision for homelessness, the call and provision for people that are on the housing register and waiting for a number of years, the call and provision of people that need to transfer into larger homes and the like. So what I would like to say in terms of subsidy loss, part of the work that we are doing, the team are doing, does fit within the Tackling Homelessness programme, which we will be reporting more detail on over the coming months. And what we are doing is looking at how we might increase the supply of landlords to reduce the impact of subsidy loss and therefore costs borne by the local authority. And I think also it's important to point out that as part of that programme, its focus is around exploring and thinking outside of the box think about what can we do differently rather than continue to just do things that we've always done with the existing avenues that we've always worked with. And so I'd just like to offer some assurance that that is part of that plan, part of that programme, and why it's a programme board. And when we come back in a few months' time, we'll be able to give you the detail of some of the things that we're thinking about, and we're talking about how we might reduce some of the impacts, cost impacts on the local authority. Thank you.
I've got a question from Cllr Peat next.
So the first one is more of a response to my esteemed colleague. The council's budget was unanimously approved at full council. Nobody raised any issues at the time, and 258 million was raised for landlord compliance, 103 of which was for building safety improvements, and 2 million for tackling stock condition backlog. The money is there, that's not the issue. I don't think we need to reduce our targets. In Bristol, 1 out of 170 people are homeless. That's just under 2,800 citywide. I don't think it's necessary in a cost of living crisis and in a housing crisis with a 21,000 household backlog waiting list that we need to be reducing our targets. I think we need to just be working more efficiently. I'm not necessarily looking for a response, but you can give whatever you like.
I think a review of understanding the level of deficit would be quite important to understand the impacts of past administration.
You had a second question, Councillor.
Yeah. So, as we're talking about existing stock, I would like to talk about Gilton House and all the properties in Bristol that are like it. It's my understanding that this particular building 2 years ago had refurbishment started that were part of a greater scheme which discovered highly flammable and toxic cladding. While the cladding was replaced, contractors were changed several times, and for months people were left without insulation during one of the highest winter fuel increases, exposed to toxic insulation, which one resident unfortunately lost their prize koi fish, and others could not live safely at home and had to move in with their friends and family.
Sorry, Councillor Peat, I'm afraid this item isn't...
I will get to the question, I promise.
So could you maybe get to the question, which, just to remind you, is about the extension of homelessness supported parking contracts?
I will get to that. So after 55 weeks of chaos, the council had decided that £25 compensation would be afforded for the...
Sorry, Councillor Peat, can we get to just straight to the question, please? Because we're
I need
not,
to provide the context, please allow me this.
House in this item.
Okay.
Thank you.
How are we supposed to prevent homelessness when people are not able to live in their homes safely? And how can we justify this miscarriage of justice when we're only providing £25 per month of compensation for not being able to live in their homes? I could speak legalese to you all day, outlining the various provisions and duties.
I'm sorry, Councillor Peat, I'm afraid this isn't related to the item.
Okay. My question is then, why did this not go through the Homes and Housing Delivery Committee? Why has this process not been transparent? How was this calculated, and what evidence it was used to justify this amount and the effects on homelessness? And lastly, if there is any room for this to be appealed and for it to go through the Homes and Housing Committee, can it be?
Again, this isn't related to the item, so I'm not going to expect answers from officers on this. Do we have any further questions about the item at hand?
Yes. Just to put a clear question, are there any regulations or guidance that will be provided to the charities and homeless support in terms of locations where they can actually provide support on the basis that you've also got Avon and Somerset in partnership with the council thinking about areas that need relevant CCTV cameras for antisocial behaviour. Then you've also got the impact in which crime, homelessness, vulnerability takes place, and to mitigate any further issues that can happen. So can there be some support towards that?
Yeah, so we've recently developed a supported housing delivery plan, which my colleague Louise Davidson and colleagues led on, which was in response to what a lot of registered providers and some charities were saying, that they weren't clear what the council was asking for in terms of what type of supported accommodation and where, and that plan does address all of those issues.
Thank you very much, everybody. I'm going to propose now that we move on to the decision part of this item. So, for the clarity of the committee and benefit for members of the public, the officer recommendations contained in this key decision report are as follows. That the Homes and Housing Delivery Policy Committee notes the decision taken to extend homelessness supported pathway contracts by 5 months from the 28th of October 24 to the 31st of March 25 at a maximum value of £2,570,462. That the committee authorises the Executive Director of Growth and Regeneration, in consultation with the Chair of the Homes and Housing Delivery Committee, to take all steps required to procure and award the contracts necessary for the implementation of the Homelessness Pathways Commissioning Plan for 3 years, with an option to extend for a further 2 years, in line with the procurement routes and maximum total budget envelope of £30,846,870, subject to any annual uplift agreed that will be based on CPI and an appropriate housing index, as outlined in this report. And that the committee authorises the Executive Director of Growth and Regeneration, in consultation with the Chair of the Homes and Housing Delivery Committee, to invoke any subsequent extensions or variations specifically defined in the contracts being awarded, up to the maximum budget envelope, subject to any annual uplift agreed that would be based on CPI and an appropriate housing index, outlined in this report. So I move those recommendations and ask for a second.
Second, Chairman.
Thank you very much. So, next we will move to the vote. So, in taking the vote, can I ask members to clearly indicate your vote by raising your hand? First of all, can I ask for votes for the recommendations? And that's everybody. So, can I confirm then that that's agreed unanimously? Fantastic. Thank you very much. So I declare that that recommendation has passed. Thank you very much. And that concludes agenda item 9. So we're now going to move on to agenda item 10, which, as I indicated earlier on, is a highly significant piece of work for this committee and will continue to be so over a number of years. So this report provides an update for members on the Housing and Consumer Standards Programme and related compliance issues. There are no decisions to be taken on this report, which is for update and information, but I would say that the work ongoing in this programme will lead to significant decisions for this committee down the line. So I'm going to invite Fiona Lester, Director of Housing and Landlord Services, and Richard James, Housing and Consumer Standards Programme Lead, to introduce and outline the report. Thank you.
Well, actually, Richard's going to outline the report. Thank you.
Thank you. I won't talk to the whole paper, but I'll just introduce the themes. So the paper outlines Bristol's current compliance position against the regulator of social housing's consumer standards. It outlines the failings against mainly the safety and quality standard and confirms the consumer rating of C3 through the regulator of social housing's regulatory judgment. The report also outlines compliance with other key regulatory and legislatory changes, so namely around the Building Safety Act and the Fire Safety Act, but also talks to the Housing Ombudsman Complaint Handling Code changes that have recently come into effect. It summarises Bristol's response through the Housing and Consumer Standards Programme. I would also like to point out Section 5, which I think is going to be really important for the committee, which starts to talk about the oversight and assurance role of the committee going forward, and highlights some of the areas around awareness support that will need to be provided, and it starts to talk about the frequency and type of oversight that will be required, and there's no detail in this report, but what we want to do is in a collaborative way bring that forward so that we meet the requirements, and because the committee is ultimately the governing body to meet the requirements of the consumer standards, so it is of the utmost importance that everyone is comfortable with their role and feel they've got the support to be able to discharge their responsibilities. So as Councillor Parsons said, it's really to note the report. There's nothing for decision at this stage, but I'm sure, as we've had already, there'll be further questions.
Thank you very much, Richard. So yeah, I did want to say that the quality and the condition of the homes that we provide through our landlord service is a hugely important focus of the work that we will be doing in this committee over the next few years. When the regulatory judgment was issued a few weeks ago, we wrote to all of the people who live in our council homes, and we apologised. We set out what the report, what the judgment means for them, and we talked about the work that we're going to be doing to improve standards going forwards. So this work is absolutely crucial to that, and this committee is and will be a forum where we can really make sure that we're being accountable to the people who live in our homes, and make sure that we're providing the safe and decent homes that everyone deserves. So I'm going to open up to questions, comments now. Councillor Peat first.
I'm going to try again. Gilton House is not alone. There will be other buildings in Bristol like this. Who was responsible for deciding that £25 was justifiable as compensation per month for not living in a home with proper insulation, and why did this not go through the Housing and Homes Delivery Committee?
I'm going to ask Fiona Lester to answer the question.
Thank you, Councillor Peat. I think what's important to say is that there has been no final decision made yet. I think that's really important. A paper giving a couple of recommendations is making its way through our decision pathway. It's been initially to PCCB, so to the Chair and Vice Chair, with the recommendations set out, and it's now making its way through the decision pathway. So there is no final decision as yet made.
May I respond? I would like any information that you have on how this decision is being made, as I'm very, as you can probably tell, vested in this issue. I am, as I said, I'm a legal advisor, and if I was advising a private tenant, I would have probably said go through a rent tribunal, because potentially if you're not able to live in your home because it's not fit for human habitation, then you shouldn't be paying rent there.
Councillor Peat, I'll just respond to that, if I may. In terms of the home fit for human habitation around the cladding, unfortunately at this stage I'm unable to comment on that, because I would say that an assessment of that type probably wasn't done, so it would need to be done. But what I would like to do is to commit to looking into the detail, making sure that you're provided with it, and that the records are provided for others, so that it isn't just provided for yourself but for others to hear.
Okay.
One of the things we've talked about is, in our approach now, is about being transparent. So I can see that you have a great interest in this. That's absolutely appropriate. You're transparent. So I'm going to make sure that we're transparent.
You've been asking for weeks. You've been asking for weeks. Why won't you transparency, but you won't answer the question.
My final question is...
I'm going to move on, if that's all right, because you have other people asking questions. So I'm going to go to Councillor Eddy next.
Do you want a question or can we debate?
Very happy for a debate. Maybe it might make most sense if we do a round of questions first and then move on to our debate. Any more questions? No? Okay then. Councillor Keys.
No, technical note then is that on the recommendation notes 5 it says endorse the proposed engagement with Homes and Housing Delivery Committee, item 6. I think that means item 5, so we'd better correct that before this gets any further.
Thank you. Any more questions? In that case, I'm going to go to Councillor Eddie next.
Thank you, Chairman. The regulator's findings judgment was shocking, controversial and serious, and rightly so, as you remarked. Immediately the ruling was made, we contacted our actual tenants, of course. I am reassured that officers sought through the Savile survey and then actually setting up the board before the end of the civil year to actually move forward, and where there is a clear indication of a work stream. So that is encouraging, of course. I do remember 20 years ago, only Paul and Ian were here then, when I was cabinet member for housing. The Labour government in its second incarnation brought in the decent home standard. Now, in fairness, that was a fairly low level of actual standards, and it effectively only required us to deal with our PRCs and our prefabs. They were the main stock elements, whereas this is absolutely across the board, of course. It does reflect that lessons learned from serious tragedies like the Grenfell Towers disaster and various smaller ones since, and increased and heightened fire concerns, of course. Nevertheless, they are serious issues, rightly so, and we need to address them. And as you say, it's going to require difficult decisions for this council and for this committee over the coming months and years. But we should be committed, firstly, to the well-being and the safety of our existing tenants. And that should be our number one requirement, of course. So certainly I and I'm sure others in this chamber will work their socks off to actually play their part in responding to the challenges ahead.
Thank you very much, Councillor Reddy. Sis?
Gosh, this has highlighted historical, unaddressed local issues. With 64,000 residents staying in council estates, and majority of the activities that are required to be delivered are not funded through the Ombudsman. The cost of 2 million in order to implement some of the recommendations is quite a bit. I think going back to the comment to our esteemed colleague, it is not necessarily about reducing the target. It is more about understanding where we are, what needs to be realistic to deliver quality over quantity. The stock that has been left behind for many years, like the case that you were mentioning, requires quality of time and service to meet, speak with people properly, work with them properly, as opposed to a fast approach. For that reason, reviewing on the corporate strategy to make it relevant, not only for the staff purposes, but for the capital budget, is equally important. It does sound like we may be, if we are continuing based on the targets, and the targets are based so the risk assessment is based on the corporate strategy, we may be creating a momentum that necessarily doesn't serve the quality that we'd like to see. For some reason, I always go towards the council estate, and when I do walk around, I'm expecting to see so many scaffolds up, people working, if it's surveyors, I'm just expecting to see so much of that work based on how much is being spent. But the two things never seem to align. Yesterday we were at a housing meeting with Eastern Lawrence Hill residents, and with the development that's happening in St. Jude's, one of the residents would mention to say, well, now there's scaffolding in the park, now the children have got nowhere to go. You know, why do you do it now? But then somebody will say, well, this is a perfect time. It should have been done years ago. Years ago. There isn't a better time, there isn't a worse time. But what is very clear is that there's been communities and residents that have not been served for generations. And the impact of that is massive. So it would be worth just knowing from the officers if they feel a review on the set targets would actually mean we can deliver better quality versus pushing for the current set corporate objective. If we were to deliver on this in a meaningful, cost-effective way. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to ask my finance colleague to respond to address the point around our business plan and around how we might fulfil the cost challenges over the next year, and the years ahead. Because as you quite rightly point out, this is going to cost a significant amount of money to invest in our existing stock for our existing residents.
Thank you, Fiona. Just to introduce myself, I'm Mark Johnson, the Interim Finance Manager for Housing and Landlord Services. As Fiona points out, and as you point out yourself, Councillor, there will potentially be significant investment required in our existing housing stock. That's against the backdrop of a finance resource within the HRA business plan that is under pressure from other areas. We are currently in the process of reviewing the current 24-25 plan to identify exactly what any potential gap may look like, and discussions will then take place around reprioritisation of spend in order to close the gaps on our priority areas.
Do you think a review on the set targets would help to deliver better quality with this new report from the regulator?
The review with regards to which targets, sorry, and some clarification on that.
Sorry, say that again.
Review with regards to which targets?
The review of the corporate strategy regarding the Project 1000 and our development objectives versus the current stock. We've got a balance between capacity as set on the risk register.
So there will be some difficult choices to make about how we prioritise our spend.
And I'd like to add as well that, of course, these decisions have a large political component as well. So members of this committee will be intimately involved in those decisions about how we prioritise our spending going forward. And as has been said, there's a number of challenges, a number of pressures on our spending. We can't prioritise everything, but I think we are very clear that we will do whatever we have to do to make sure that the homes that our existing residents currently live in are safe and decent homes, while also addressing the challenges of housing delivery.
We have to pay for it. I'm going to have to pay for replacing my cladding, 200 or 300 quid.
Sorry, can I quiet in the gallery, please? Fiona, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gibbs.
Thank you. So I'd like to address the section of the report that's handed over to the politicians, the what do we do next then in section 5. Now, I think firstly it's good to know that we have an improvement plan. So clearly things have been going wrong for a long time. There's a legacy that needs to be fixed here. I was a bit surprised that that improvement plan wasn't part of the report pack that we were given here, and there isn't a great deal of detail about what the work streams are. We've got the Savills report in executive summary that they've given us. I didn't think that was particularly well written, to be honest. The recommendations were buried. You really had to go hunting for them, and they weren't presented as a single sheet. Now, maybe I'm just being lazy with this, but that's the kind of thing that we need in order to track progress. That those work streams need to be presented in full to members, and then we need to summarise it down into what are the work streams, and then give them a rank rating for what's their current status. I imagine a lot of them are red, but also what are we doing about them, our progress against that improvement plan. And I think that's the kind of thing that, were I on this committee for the rest of the year, which I'm not, so it's nothing to do with me, that is what I would like to see, looking at each one of those items, what's its current status, what's our trajectory. And then the question is asked here, how frequently should that come back to this committee? I think there's a question that we should ask ourselves first. Should it come back to this full committee, or would it be better to set up a subcommittee? And then the frequency, as recommended in 5.5 every single meeting. Now, this committee meets 6 times a year. That does seem about right to get a meaningful measure of progress that hopefully one would be able to track through the year. So if we're being asked a question by officers, I think, yes, we should have a report coming here frequently. 6 times a year is good. An open question to my colleagues, whether that's the full committee or a subcommittee, to look at that more effectively. And I do think that sharing the full report and then a summary at each subsequent meeting is the most effective way of doing this.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you, Dennis.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, you're absolutely right in terms of the detail of the plan. The only reason that we've been unable to provide the detail of the plan is because we're still working through changes with the regulator. So we have a final document that we shared with them. There were some comments, we're working through those comments, and that is why we haven't shared the detail of the plan. The detail of the plan provides all of the detail, all of the work streams, because whilst you pointed out quality and safety is key, and that's focus, that's the largest part, there are other areas that we need to work on that have been identified by the regulator, and the big sort of significant overarching part of all of it is around our data, as was pointed out by colleagues, is around our data and the way that we manage that. So we have the plan outlines all of the work streams that sit within that. It's quite, as you can imagine, quite a large plan. So the expectation is that we would absolutely share the detail with you, because how can you hold us to account and scrutinise without it? So just to provide reassurance, the only reason that it hasn't been included is still finalising the dates that we are working to with the regulator.
I wasn't just interrogating our director on this, it is a challenge to the rest of the committee. How do we want to receive information?
Thank you. Thanks very much. I'm going to go to Cllr Peat, please.
I'm not going to go off this time, I promise. I wanted to ask, the judgment reference carbon monoxide alarms not being fitted. This is obviously a cause of concern and that I've heard is disputed. Could you just clarify what the situation is and what percentage of council properties are now confirmed to have them installed?
Yes. So the position in the regulatory judgment was primarily around data. We couldn't evidence that they were in place. What we have now is we have 95% of properties with gas installation, which definitely have a carbon monoxide detector. We have another 5% which the gas service has been undertaken, and we are told that they've been fitted, although we are still doing that data reconciliation. So I don't want to tell you it's 100% today because that data reconciliation hasn't been completed, but we are confident that we are in quite a strong position regarding carbon monoxide detectors.
Thank you.
Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Picking back up on the systems, in the IT systems it says the council is currently implementing at pace a new IT system provided by NEC with go-live scheduled to be within no more than 12 months. Well, I think, in terms of what Councillor Coombs is saying, in terms of that dashboard, in terms of tracking actions, that looks like the next check-in point for a new IT system is in 12 months' time, when we might be told it's going to take another year or 2 years. So I'd really be looking to see more detail on what is that specification of the IT system, how does it fit with existing systems, who's been responsible for designing the specification, and how are we kind of monitoring performance against delivery, against anticipated timings.
Yes, so the implementation of the NEC system is taking place, and it's been ongoing prior to this programme and the external reviews. Part of the programme is to assess the specification against what we know now and our understanding. So, but it is so we're doing that work, and that's part of the programme. We are likely, before the full implementation of that programme, to have to use existing systems and other offline workarounds, which aren't ideal but are necessary in the interim. But I would like to give assurance that making sure that the NEC system does fit all of our needs, including the stuff we know now, is critically important, and we're acutely aware of it.
And who's been speccing that?
The review is going through the programme, so we are seeking some support from others. So, for example, Savills have been helping us with guidance and advice, and part of the programme is to review that specification, which hasn't been completely reviewed yet. And then put an additional plan in place, and that might mean that there are additional changes and additional tweaks to that system once it has gone live. I think it's unlikely that it will fit every single requirement, but what we are really keen on is that it fits the really critical health and safety related requirements.
Hi, Councillor. I just wanted to add to that. In relation to into the performance dashboard that you commented on. So what I can give assurance is that we're not waiting for the NEC product to go live to do that work around capturing data performance. That's a must. It's a work stream set out very clearly. We've already have somebody recruited to that role, and that work's underway and being built. As is pointed out, we're having to take from various data sources at the moment. That gives us a clear indication of what's needed, so we're plugging that into the NEC product, future-based, to make sure that it's able to provide us with the data that we need for our new performance dashboards. I think it's also important to say that through this piece of work, what we've recognised is that our data needs to align itself with the organisation's data. So there has been a change in the NEC project outline, and now data will be provided through the data lake for us to be able to pull data in the way that is pulled across the whole of the council. So there has been some changes made to the way that we're going to take reports through the NEC project.
Thank you very much, everybody. Now, first of all, I'd like to thank members of the committee for your incisive questions and recommendations as well. We'll be taking those away and working on them. I'd also like to thank people in the public gallery. I'm very aware that the issues raised in this report are not new to people who live in our council homes, and the tenants' organisations and many tenants have been raising concerns in this area for a very long time, so I wanted to thank particularly people in the public gallery for coming along, and I wanted to reassure as well that we have we're developing a programme of engagement with people who live in our homes and other stakeholders around this work, and we're going to be working across the city to make sure that the voices of people who live in our homes are heard while we're working on these improvements. And we know that this is something that we can't do alone. We'll need to be working with people across the city to achieve it. I'm going to move the recommendations to the report now. And these are that the Homes and Housing Delivery Committee note the key findings and recommendations of the External Consumer Standards Preparedness Review and Landlord Compliance Data Review, item 3 in Appendix A. The update on the Housing and Consumer Standards Programme and Programme Board and the Strategic Housing Review, items 1 and 2. The self-referral to the Regulator of Social Housing on the 15th of April 2024, that's item 3. And the regulatory judgment of the Regulator of Social Housing published on the 9th of July 2024. The potential requirement to review the 24-25 Housing Revenue Account budget within the financial year, that's item 2. And it says note stroke endorse on the proposed engagement with the Homes and Housing Delivery Committee, and as Nicholas pointed out, that's item 5, not item 6. So this is a report for information. There's no vote to be taken, but can I ask the committee, are you happy to note the report as per the recommendations? Thank you very much. So that concludes item 10, and we're going to move on now to item 11, which is the final item of our meeting today. This is the 2024-25 P2 Finance Forecast Report, HRA, that's Housing Revenue Account, and General Fund Housing. This report presents the Housing and Landlord Services financial forecast at period 2, quarter 1, against the approved budget at the end of May 2024. There are no decisions to be taken on this report, which is for information. And I'm going to invite Fiona, first of all, to introduce the report.
I'm going to go straight to Martin.
Let's go straight.
And allow Martin to give us the detail.
Chair, sorry, I'm going to have to excuse myself. I have another engagement associated all that.
Of course.
Thank
you very much for coming, Councillor Goggin. Thank you for your contributions, as always.
I'm actually officer at second step, open revenue officers, so half a year as a fund worker.
Thank you. And we'll catch up outside the meeting as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Parsons. So the report, as you detailed, reports on the financial position of both the General Fund Housing Function and the Housing Revenue Account as at the end of period 2 against the 2024 budget. General Fund Revenue Housing consists of housing options, private housing and accessible homes, housing solutions and housing delivery. It has an annual budget for the year of 22.9 million with a forecast outturn of 26.7 million. The forecast variance or overspend is in relation to housing subsidies loss, which we've already spent some time discussing in this committee. As Paul has already presented as well, my colleague Paul, there are a number of initiatives currently being undertaken to address this issue around service redesign, working with providers to reduce costs and increase supply, and this is all done through the Tackling Homelessness programme. There is a further risk around the housing subsidy loss that our estimates may end up being higher, or the actuals may end up being higher than our current estimates. But as Paul has given assurance in this meeting, we think we are working towards a more stable position. There is also an element of capital funding within the General Fund around housing delivery. We have a budget of 35.2 million with a forecast favourable variance of 2 million. That is in relation to Hengrove, where the scheme has progressed further since the budgets were initially set back in the back end of last calendar year. We have a more detailed design and delivery plan, and that has resulted in revised cash flow forecasts, which resulted in a revised forecast for the year. So the HRA revenue account, the revenue side of it, the HRA is legally obliged to set a balanced budget. The budget this year for 24-25, in order to balance it, consisted of a contribution to reserves of 6.7 million. That forecast contribution has now reduced to 3.1 million, which is an adverse variance or overspend predicted of 3.6 million. Key areas that have led to this are a slight change in the profile handover of new build units, which is reducing our income by around about 0.2 million. There are also a number of items in relation to regulatory judgment and consumer standards work, one of which is £600,000 overspend forecast against repairs and maintenance, as we are clearing the backlog of repairs. And also we have a slight overspend. We have an overspend of 1.8 million against fire security costs. This is down to a delay in the installation of fire alarms. The reason for that installation, which is in the capital section of this report, is that we are finding delays with the new building safety regulator application process, which we have to go through when we undertake certain types of works on certain buildings, and this falls into that. We have additional software license costs of 300,000 and additional inflationary pressures around insurance and internal recharges of around 0.9 million. Insurance costs have gone up since the budget was set, and the cost of services delivered by other areas of council to the HRA have also increased by more than is anticipated. There is a further overspend forecast, specifically in relation to the consumer standards, of 0.3 million. These overspends are offset by predicted underspend against utility costs of around £1 million. There have been further risks identified at period 2. We have a risk around our void reduction assumption of 0.5 million and around our assumption around additional service charges income of 1.1 million. Depreciation is also a potential risk of 1.3 million, and that's dependent on the level of our final capital outturn on the home improvement programme and the mix of what we actually spend those funds on. With regards to the capital programme, we have a home improvement programme budget this year of 96 million, a new build programme of 256 million, the replacement of the IT system, which has been mentioned, the NEC system, 1.3 million, and replacement of the grey fleet of vans of 5 million, giving a total budget of 358. The forecast outturn for the year is 233 million, giving movement or slippage of 135 million. With regards to the HIP, we are seeing £19 million worth of slippage, and the key reasons for these movements are we have had delays in sealing contracts. We have undertaken accelerated spend during the previous financial year. So again, that lag between setting the budget and the start of the financial year, we've spent more on some capital projects than was originally thought in that period. Some projects are turning out to be more complex than was originally thought and have required a redesign and procurement of more specialist contractors. As just mentioned, we have delays as a result of the new building safety regulator applications process. And we've also had issues in gaining access to homes and contractors unwilling or unable to undertake some works on our behalf. With the new build, the forecast is now 145 million, a variance of 111 million. Key reasons are issues with site infrastructure and utilities leading to delays on getting on sites. As with Hengrove in the general fund, a number of schemes have progressed from the point where the budget was initially set to the point where we now have more certainty over what the schemes will look like and the delivery time scales. leading to revised cash flow projections. And also there is a human resource challenge within the department as well, where we have quite a large number of vacancies. They are currently about to commence their recruitment drive and hope to start interviews in September and hope to have people, staff in place in November, December, and that will give us the capacity to progress some additional students which are currently on board because we do not have the resource to allocate to them. With the fleet replacement, we are forecasting just a 200k spend this year against the £5 million budget. That is a result of there being unsuitable recharging infrastructure within the city at this moment in time in order to accommodate an all-EV fleet.
Thank you very much, Martin. I'm afraid we're running somewhat behind time because of the delays earlier to the meeting. Before we move to a brief round of questions, I just wanted to highlight that these financial challenges are obviously not a legacy that this committee would want to be inheriting, but we are where we are. These are challenges that are being faced across the country as well. So I wanted to highlight as well that earlier this month we wrote to the new government along with 18 of the biggest council landlords in the country, highlighting the financial black hole really for council housing that is looming, and asking for greater investment in certainty of regulation and certainty of future funding, so that we can provide the homes that our city needs. I'm going to move to Councillor Thomas first.
Sorry, I didn't hear your name.
Apology, it's Martin.
Martin, sorry, your surname?
Johnson.
Thank you. That was kind of very helpful, comprehensive report. Just in terms of kind of clarity of exposition, if you could kind of refer to table numbers or something like that when you're talking it through, because otherwise it's quite difficult to sort of move between all the bullet points, but otherwise very helpful and comprehensive. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Keane.
Thanks. Two questions, one on the housing revenue account and the other one on capital spending and treasury management. So on the HRA, it seems that the budget was to effectively run it at a profit of 6 million over the course of the year of income greater than expenditure. You've explained very well why that's being reduced, but it just goes into the reserves. Is that a normal thing? Are the reserves later used to build more houses, or should we actually be able to set a fully balanced budget to maybe increase the level of maintenance out of the current profit?
So there's a couple of key points there. One is the revenue account, the other is the maintenance requirement of the homes as a capital item, so it doesn't go through the housing revenue account. While it's part of housing revenue, it's actually capital, so you won't see it reflected in the 6.7 million surplus. But to address your first point, that surplus into reserves can be used for a multiple of purposes. It can be used either to fund future years' deficits should they arise, which is not an unusual thing in years, or it can be used to partially fund the capital programme as well.
Thank you, that's useful. And then on the capital programme there is slippage, that's fairly common. I'm wondering if that's funded by borrowing, has the money already been lent and is sitting in our account, or is there a treasury management strategy of only borrowing as required so that the interest that would otherwise be payable is not paid and could thus be put back into the revenue account for the lending department?
No money's been borrowed yet. The monies will be drawn as required.
So does that mean that there's an offsetting saving from interest that I guess is under someone else's budget line, the corporate budget, could be reassigned here?
There is a potential interest saving there, but it's not significant, but it is something that for P3 and P4 we have started to look at.
Thank you very much. With apologies for today's debate on this item, but out of respect for people's time, we're now at 12 o'clock, which is the advertised end time for this meeting. So I'm going to draw that debate to a close now, and I'm going to ask that we that we carry on with the officer recommendations, which is that the Homes and Housing Deliveries Policy Committee notes the report on the P2 forecast for housing and landlord services. Is the committee happy to note this report? Thank you. Thank you very much. I should say as well that if members have further questions on this or any other item, then please feel free to put them in writing, and we can make sure that we get an officer response in writing to all of those. I'd like to thank everybody for their attendance. I'd like to thank members for your participation, for officers for presenting the report so clearly, and for the responses to questions. And I'd also particularly like to thank everyone in the public gallery for coming along and taking part in our democratic process. The next meeting of the Homes and Housing Delivery Policy Committee will be 10 a.m. on Friday the 20th of September 2024. Thank you very much.